On today's show, Alperen Sengun's Houston Rockets season in review, expectations coming into his third NBA season, growing into an all-star caliber player, questions we still have about his game, as well as one game, one play, and one number from this past season, plus his overall season grade. It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That's the best way you can help us out with our show, is to comment anything on YouTube. Let us know your thoughts on Alperen Sengun's season. Share your season grade for Alperen Sengun in the YouTube comments. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether you're on the way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for being an everydayer. Joining us now is your weekly co-host, NBA draft enthusiast, and diehard Houston Rockets fan, Dr. Madison Moore. You can track down on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Here to break down Alperen Sengun's really spectacular season for the Houston Rockets. A lot of positives to talk about from Alperen Sengun's third-year campaign here. Obviously, it's a little bit bittersweet because it was cut so short. Him missing about the last quarter or so of the season with what looked to be at the time a much worse injury than it wound up ultimately being against the Sacramento Kings, but still a lot of positives to be taken from this last season with Alpi. Madison, when you try to look at it from a 10,000 foot view at everything that Alperen Sengun achieved, right? He's coming into year 3 of his NBA season, and frankly, there were kind of a lot of questions about Alperen Sengun kind of coming into the year. We knew that he was this, passing phenom, right? He had a great feel for the ball. We knew about his offensive prowess and how good he could be on that side of the floor. But ultimately, there were some concerns and some questions about what he could achieve defensively. And I think that that's probably one of the best places to start here as we're navigating and doing his kind of season in review episode. Is he really answered a lot of those questions defensively this season. Later on, we're going to get to our one game, one play, one number that stands out from Alpi's season. And spoiler alert for me, one of my things is going to be, just highlighting how much improved he was as a defender this past season.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest question mark coming in, as you said. Alperen Sengun, we knew, was this uber talented offensive forward, up and coming offensive forward. We knew that he had all-star to star upside offensively alone. But when we talk about Houston basketball and Houston sports, what matters is championships. So it's not just enough that you are an all-star level player. You have to be able to be an all-star on a top 10 defense. And with Alperen Sengun being a center, one of the most important defensive positions on the floor, there was a big question mark with some of his physical limitations of how good of a defense can we build with him as a focal point. And I think just in his third year, he answered those questions. We did have a top 10 defense with Alperen Sengun on the floor this year. And to me, that is what I needed to see to really start to I always believed in him, but to buy in as a championship cornerstone, right? And so for me, Alperen Sengun answered one of the biggest questions I had about him. And on top of that, he kept up his incredible offensive production and actually build on it from the previous seasons. A lot is made about our young players and their development over the years and how development isn't always linear. Well, there's one player that's development has been quite literally linear, and that's Alperen Sengun. And I really appreciate that from him because, through the ups and downs, we still always had a very, very bright prospect that's been coming up. And now as all the other guys are starting to catch up to him, we see really what the future of this Rockets can be.
And I was going to make a joke and say that maybe even some exponential growth here, exponential development from Alpi with just how impressive he was this past season, right? He was the first player of the Rockets young core 6 to really start playing like a true star, right?
Right.
I think we can safely say even though he didn't ultimately get selected to an all-star team this past season, he played like an all-star this past year. He played all-star caliber basketball, averaged 21 points per game, about 9.5 rebounds, 5 assists per night, improved drastically as a defender, was the defensive anchor, right? The defensive five-man for, throughout stretches of the season, a top 5 defense, and then finishing the season as a top 10 defense, which actually the defense kind of slid a little bit once Alpi went out is the crazy thing. So, right, like that's one of the things to note here is that Alpi was an important part of a top-tier Rockets defense under new head coach Ime Udoka. And I think that one of the things that really stands out when we kind of scale things back and look at kind of, reflecting on the beginning part of the season is how quickly Ime Udoka and the rest of the coaching staff identified Alpi and realized, hey, this guy is our best shot to win games, right? Like we had been begging for this for what felt like a couple of years with Steven Silas, where we were so confused as to why Alpi was, oftentimes an afterthought offensively, or why they were trying to pigeonhole him into playing a role that he really wasn't suited to, right? On both sides of the floor, whether it was offensively, they had him, strictly as a rim runner, right? They weren't playing to his strengths offensively, and then defensively, playing him strictly in drop coverage, right? Basically, setting him up for failure on the defensive side of the floor. Finally, we brought in a new coaching staff, a new regime who looked at the way that the old coaching staff was doing stuff, was like, we're throwing all this out. No. This guy can play in a variety of different coverages defensively, right? We can let him be a little aggressive at times. We can trust him. He's got high IQ, quick hands, deceptive, kind of, a little bit of sneaky athleticism there. And then offensively, they actually leaned into his talents and his gifts. And we saw them doing that very early on in the season. Literally game two, Madison, right? They trusted him in crunch time against the Spurs to generate offense, dumping the ball down low and letting him go to work to try and generate good offense. That was the moment where I was like, oh, thank God Ime Udoka's here, because this stuff would not have flown for a third season in a row.
And not just Ime Udoka, but Fred VanVleet. I mean, I think Fred VanVleet was huge in identifying that Alperen Sengun was ready right away, and made it a focal point to make him the focal point of this offense. And when the team was struggling, not just to get himself involved, but to make sure to get Alpi the ball, because he created good buckets for this team. And I think that was very important in instilling the confidence in Alperen Sengun. And although you could still tell that he was being coached hard, there were games throughout the season where Alpi wasn't playing up to what he had set the standard for himself this season. Then he'd go to the bench. You know what I mean? It once you set that bar of who you were supposed to be, I think everybody got held accountable. But for the most part, he was the most consistent young player on this team, and probably the second most consistent player on the team altogether. And I think I couldn't be more proud of Alpi for his growth this year. Not just being an offensive focal point, but as we say, it's very hard to play both ends of the ball and to be very attentive and aware, and also how he approached coaching. I think the way Alpi's approached coaching, not taking things personal and taking them in the right ways so that he can get better, and really working on his body to get stronger, box guys out, and really take responsibility for when he makes mistakes on the court. Just all around right mentality, the right stuff you want in a bright young star for the Rockets.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things too that stands out, just as I'm kind of thinking back on little anecdotal pieces about this past season, is one of the things about Alpi is he's an absolute workhorse, right? He talked about this during the Silas era, that he wanted to be coached hard. Unfortunately, that wasn't really Silas's forte. Ime Udoka, no questions about it. He's ready to coach you hard, right? He's ready to coach you just like those European coaches would coach Alperen Sengun, right? Overseas. And so I think that for Alpi, right, he's a workhorse. He wanted it. He wants the what is it? He wants to be great, right? He has that mentality, not just it's a talent thing, but it's also a mentality thing. He wants to be great. We talked about this back when he did his appearance on the Paul George podcast, right? And how he talked about wanting to be great, and how he just, the mental makeup, right, of his competitive edge, everything that he has about him screams greatness. When you look at the talent, when you look at his desire, when you look at his work ethic, he's constantly one of the last guys in the gym at Rockets practices. I think Kelly Eco shared this earlier this season, but it is a fun little, anecdote to share, is that Alpi's always staying late after practice to play king of the court with, usually it's Boban and Tiago Splitter and a couple other guys. Some of the other bigs will stay there after the practice. Sometimes it's Jock, Landale getting in the mix, maybe Jeff Green. And he's always having fun out there with these guys, right? Just, working a little extra. And that's just kind of who he is as a person. But coming up, we want to get into some of the other areas of growth. We highlighted a couple of them as well, but things that Alpi still also we'd like to see him work on, as well as questions that we have for him moving forward. And eventually we're going to get into our one game, one play, and one number from this past season that stand out about Alperen Sengun. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wondered what adventure could be around the very next corner? Well, our friends over at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of having to connect your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen at your fingertips. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. But hey, maybe you want a little bit more space, right? The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room for up to 8, an expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing capacity. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is right there to answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp, because look, sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Whether it's big or small, certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that stuff out, especially to someone who's unbiased when it comes to your life. That's where therapy can be a huge benefit. I've done therapy in the past, and it's incredibly cathartic to have a professional really sit there and help you kind of comb through anything that's going on in your life, right? It could be maybe something happened at work, right? You got into a disagreement with a coworker, or maybe you made a mistake and it's really kind of weighing on you, right? Or it could be something happened in your personal life, right? It could be, an argument that you had with a close friend or a loved one. You don't want to bottle that stuff up. It's unhealthy, right? You need to be able to talk through some of those things. Therapy can be different for everyone, and honestly, most of us have bigger problems than what's going on with our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get those things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, Madison. So when we look at how Alperen Sengun grew this past season, we already talked a lot about his defensive growth. I think one thing that really does stand out, I do think that this was something that he did kind of hit a brick wall at some point, but it wasn't just Alpi hitting a brick wall. It was the Rockets collectively as a team hitting a brick wall, which was once opposing teams started to really game plan for Alpi being the number one option, we saw them realize, all we have to do is shut down Alpi, and it cripples the rest of the Houston Rockets offense because they have a distinct lack of shooting and they have very limited, guys elsewhere on the roster that can create at the level at which he can create, which is why around the midway part of the season, I want to say like December-ish, maybe early January, we started seeing teams like double, triple, quadruple team Alperen Sengun, stacking the paint against him, right? Just everything to slow him down, because they were just like, okay, well, if we stop this one guy, we have a pretty good chance of beating the Rockets, because there's not really anybody else on the roster that can step up to beat us, because unfortunately Jalen was struggling. There might be the off night where like Fred or Dillon could have stepped up, but I think that was a really important experience for Alperen Sengun to go against so many of those double and triple teams on a nightly basis, because it also allowed him the opportunity to learn to see, okay, how do I beat these double teams, right? Because we still saw a fair amount of times where Alpi would be able to power through a double team and still finish, with a creative finesse move around the rim, or even finish through contact, or kicking it out to an open man, right? Creating good offense just by leveraging his scoring gravity.
Yes. And I think that highlights a very important part of this team and the development of this team, and why you put guys in winning contexts. And Alpi was the first to experience double and triple teams, and we got to see how that really stagnated his offense and really stagnated this team altogether. But it also, like you said, highlighted where Alpi needed, one of the biggest ways Alpi needed to get better on the court. The same is done for Jalen Green, and I think it's really kind of a blessing in disguise that these guys, Jalen wasn't playing well at the beginning, so Alpi got to see what doubling really, how it really, some of the things he needs to work on when he get doubled. The same for Jalen at the end of the season when Alpi wasn't playing. But all in all, I think the doubling really showed Alpi that he has to be an even quicker decision maker. He needs to be even quicker decision maker when he touches the ball, and he has to anticipate these doubles and triples and get rid of the ball quicker. And sometimes not making the home run pass is the best thing to do, right? So Alpi typically sets guys up and is very patient, which has really benefited him when he's in his one-on-one matchups. But when you have double team, you have guys really pressuring the ball, you can't be that patient, and you have to make the simple play and let that reversal keep the team in rotation, and which allows other guys to better help you. Yes, the shooting was an issue for the guys this season, but there were things that Alpi could have done better to really help himself during those matchups. And then he allows the ball to reverse, and he can also score on the reversals as the ball gets to whipping around the court. So not only I think that is something for that he needs to work on, but it also is identified for the team to work as well on.
Absolutely. And, I think that it's kind of weird when we think about, how teams started to hone in on Alpi. One thing that I was so encouraged by, that he made part of his bag earlier in the season, and then just kind of disappeared as the season progressed. He had the little flamingo shot, right? The little one-legged, pull, face up midi. And he was using that. It felt like a fair bit early on this season. And I don't know if the coaches told him to stop doing it or what, but it kind of disappeared as the season went along. And I was actually really disappointed to see that, because I think for a guy like Alpi, the next evolution in his game, if you will, is going to be expanding his range. He has all the talent in the world inside and around the rim. He's got a rare blend of both power and finesse. We've seen him, he's got some of the best footwork in the NBA. He can get up and around, bigger guys, stronger guys. He can power through guys that aren't as strong as he is. He's gotten better at absorbing contact and finishing around the rim. We've seen his aggressiveness, especially on the offensive glass, start to, tick up a little bit. But for him to really reach that next level to where defenses can't, again, I don't want to say he's one-dimensional, because he's not one-dimensional whatsoever. He's his ability to score around the basket and his playmaking makes him such a lethal force. But you got to have counters, right? And if defenses are going to counter you the way that they kind of were at points this season, by collapsing the defense on you, by stacking the paint, whatever, then you got to be able to punish them by either hitting shots in the mid-range at a minimum, or being able to stretch things all the way out to the three-point range. And it kind of felt like he got away from that as the season went on.
Yeah, and I think that is probably one of Alpi's biggest developmental areas. And this also talks about how he was getting doubled. Alperen Sengun received a lot of his double teams out of the post. And that's really where Alperen Sengun's bread and butter is. And that is his post game. That is where most of his shot creation comes from. And he likes to play make out of that spot as well. But without a face-up game as well as a jump shot, it limits Alpi's offensive versatility, right? And so when you're back to the basket, you can't see the floor as well, right? And so you don't anticipate those doubles as well, and guys are doubling you in that. But if Alpi had a competent face-up game, then he'd be a triple threat effect from the perimeter as well as those elbows. And that's one of the things he started to add in the mid-range, but he has to extend that to the three-point line, because guys are not going to double Alpi out at the three-point line. He's a big, you know what I mean? You hardly ever see Jokic get doubled out there that far, right? And so you want Alpi to add that part to his game, because it will allow him to diversify his offense. And now he's not getting doubles. He can read and be patient like he wants, or take the three-point J. And it also allows the Rockets to play their offense in different ways, right? Because a back to the basket, yes, this is your bread and butter, but that's not always what's good for the rhythm of the entire team. And so it's important for Alpi to be able to play in these different ways that allows not only for him to become a more effective player, but the team as well to become more effective.
Yeah, I always go back to this example here, but right, the reason the Nuggets were able to carve up the Heat so easily in last year's finals was because Bam Adebayo had to go out to the perimeter to check Jokic, because he's such a three-point threat. And that prevented Bam from being able to hover at the at the free throw line, or even sag deeper than that, even to blow up any of the plays that the Miami Heat were that the Denver Nuggets were trying to run in and around the basket, right? These little off-ball cuts and actions and whatnot. Whereas right now with Sengun, he is a lethal passer, absolutely. But when he's at the top of the key, there were points this season where he's not even looking to shoot the ball. And that's a problem, unfortunately. Like, that can't be the case, because then what you're allowing the opposing five-man, or at various points this season, right, we saw other guys, checking Alpi, maybe it'd be a weird mismatch, whatever. You allow your defender to sag all the way back and then blow up certain actions or be that help, that quick double team or that stunt towards an action that you're running on either side of the floor or trying to get some backdoor action going towards the rim. And that's problematic, right? Especially when you have athletes on this roster like Jalen Green, like Amin Thompson, like Cam Whitmore, guys who can be off-ball threats that you can get some easy, a little over-the-top pass, some action going towards the rim. Those are opportunities that I think that were really limited for the Rockets because of the way teams were just guarding Alpi when he did have the ball on the perimeter, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'll just add really quickly. I mean, Alpi, a very underrated part of Alpi's game is his pump fake and attacking of closeouts. Even when Alpi is still not an effective 3-point shooter, and he still gets guys to bite on his pump fake, as we've seen in the first 2 years. And he actually has a really good handle for a center and can attack closeouts very well and very effectively. And you want him to be able to access that part of his game a lot more often. And he just has to add that 3-point shot. And that, for me, gets into what it means and what it looks like to see Alperen Sengun as a superstar. Because right now he's a borderline all-star level player. He's on the right track in his trajectory when we talk about his linear growth. But what are the steps that he needs to take, since he's already such an incredible player, that he needs to hit that next level as superstar and be a number 1, number 2 option on a championship team? And it's adding that 3-point shot. And for me as well, rebounding. Alpi has struggled throughout his career with strength and holding his position, and sometimes we can see him fall asleep on that end. But I like to see him get up to around 10 to 11 rebounds a game and really improve his strength in that center of gravity to get more rebounds, more defensive rebounds, to really move guys in that paint. The league isn't as big as it used to be, and he has a similar body type to Kevin Love in his prime. And I'd like to see him. Kevin Love had no athleticism. Alpi's way more athletic than him. You know what I mean? He was just strong
couldn't
and he was
jump
moving
over a phone
guys.
book, man.
Yeah, exactly. But he was moving guys and he was getting what we call them Z-bounds. Zebo used to get those rebounds where it's just all about position and anticipation. And I think the key to that is for him to get stronger. And I like to see a lot more 15 to 20 rebound games in Alperen Sengun's bag.
I'll tell you what, one way to get better as a rebounder and to get stronger is to just be trapped in a gym with Steven Adams all summer. I don't know if it's going to be all summer, but going up against Steven Adams, in training camp, practice every day, whatever, you're going to have to learn how to be a good rebounder dealing with Steven Adams on the other end of the court. So that's absolutely going to be some in-house, right? Like, what do we call iron sharpens iron, right? So Alpi having to deal with that every day in practice is absolutely going to give him a bit more of a rebounding edge. But coming up, we're going to get into our 1 game, 1 play, and 1 number from Alperen Sengun's season. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free, because LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to hire right now. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, here's my favorite part now, Madison, of these season review episodes is revisiting 1 game, 1 play, and 1 number that stand out from Alperen Sengun's season, a season where he finished 3rd in most improved player of the year voting, a season in which I believe he was the 2nd youngest player with, I had this crazy stat line pulled up and I lost it a second ago. So I'm gonna circle back because I want to reference that before we wrap up the episode. But I'll let you tee us off with your 1 game. Give us your 1 game to start.
Okay. My 1 game is in January when the Rockets beat the New Orleans Pelicans. Okay. Alperen Sengun had 37 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists. He had a block and a steal. And more importantly, this was a response game for Alperen Sengun getting punked by Nurkic. Is Valanciunas or Nurkic? I think it's Valanciunas.
Valanciunas for New
Orleans. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah. So Valanciunas is one of Alperen Sengun's arch nemesis. It's a guy that just serves Alpi every time they play each other. He just he really just his size and strength and not just his strength but his length really bothers Alperen Sengun.
Well, there's very few guys that match up properly with Valanciunas as far as being as big and strong as he is. That oftentimes the reason that Valanciunas gets into trouble is guys who are a mismatch for him, right? Guys who can drag him out to the perimeter, maybe attack off the catch, right? Get him off balance, that kind of thing. So Alpi unfortunately isn't either of those things when it comes to Valanciunas.
Yeah, exactly. And Valanciunas is really a really very skilled offensive player, and he really just punks Alpi sometimes, dog. And the way Alpi responded to this man in this New Orleans game, I mean, he really took it to him. He was not afraid. I love that type of that's that dog we talking about, like really taking it to players. And he really had Valanciunas in foul trouble the entire game with how aggressive he was taking it to him. And that's the type of stuff I want to see out of my stars when we look at the way you respond to adversity, the way you circle games on the calendar, showing that competitive nature. That's the stuff I love to see from Alpi. He's done it a couple times to Sabonis as well, but I think right now that is his biggest. That is the guy that does him the worst. He has his worst games against New Orleans, and I love the way he came out in that game. And it just to me was kind of a veer into the future. We look for flashes with these young guys, and it's really just a flash into the future of how he'll respond against adversity when teams really kick his butt.
I love that. No, that's a great pick. And remember that game. That was a hell of a game too.
Yeah, it was good.
For me, I'm going to go, and I was torn here because I think the low-hanging fruit here, and we talked about this when we were picking our favorite games of the season, is him dropping 45 and 16 on Wemby. Yeah. Let's face it. Look, Wemby is still just a rookie. He's going to get a lot better. It sucks that he's already as good as he is, and it sucks that he's in the Rockets division, and it sucks that he went to San Antonio, and the Rockets are going to have to deal with him for the next decade plus. But all that being said, yes, the 45-16 was incredible, but that's a bad Spurs team. That's a rookie Wemby. Yeah, I could pick that one. So I'll give that one a hat tip honorable mention. But the game the day after, and I think you brought this one up when we did our reflection pod, that game against the Clippers, a very, very good Clippers team. Really that he had a triple double, 23 points, 19 rebounds, 14 assists, had a couple steals in there. Good, efficient game, 10 of 19 shooting from the floor. He was utterly dominant in that game. The Rockets didn't ultimately win that game, but it was such a fantastic performance by Alpi. It was on national TV. It was, I don't want to say a coming out game for Alpi because we knew that he was capable of that stuff, but to do all of that on the second night of a back-to-back when you just hung 45 on Wemby's head, like that was an insane stretch for Alperen Sengun, an insane, little 1-2 punch back-to-back set of games. So, and I just remember watching the way that he was kind of facilitating that game thinking, holy crap, this is what it can be when it's really working at a very, very high level. The Rockets managed to shoot 43%, which is not sustainable. No team's going to shoot 43% every single night. But that was one of the first games where it was like, oh, this is what it can look like when Alpi's generating good offense and you're actually hitting your shots at a high clip. Like they look almost unguardable. And then unfortunately the Clippers on the other end, they were pretty sensational as well. And they really heated up in that second half. I think that was the half or the game where Paul George had it was either 0 or 1 point at halftime. And then he scored 20 points in the second half or 21 in the second half. He woke up in a big way. So unfortunate that they lost that game, but I really loved what we saw out of Alperen Sengun in that one, especially just, again, it was not really our first look, but just a real good look at, man, this is what it could look like when everybody's actually firing on all cylinders with Alpi generating all the attention that he does on the offensive end. Go for it. You're good.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's unfortunate we lost that game, but that game also wasn't. I thought both Jalen and Alpi were having a good game. I think Jalen struggled early, but I thought they both were. It really was more a rendition of what these Rockets' future could be. So I really like that pick.
All right, give us your one play for Alperen Sengun this season? A season full of amazing plays, mind you, but give us your one play or your one sequence or whatever you got for us.
You know, when you are great, you have a lot of highlight plays. Like, you know what I mean? And for Alpi, I feel like he's made these highlight plays. Like, he's kind of numbed us to it because now he's doing them just so consistently. Like, we always see the no look backdoor bounce pass.
Yeah, you're
like,
kind of expecting it, right?
We see him. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They're every game now. Like, you know what I'm saying? We see the spin move, right? But there was this one play that I just said, nah, bro, you traveled. That was not. That wasn't
the
legal.
Step through. I already know which one it is.
That play,
exactly which one
and
it
then
was.
on slow motion, you said, "Oh my God!" Alperen Sengun on Miles Turner hit him with a nasty spin move, and on the spin, he did not bring his other foot down, and instead, in slow motion, stepped through on the other side of the basket and finished the layup. I've never seen anybody do a play like that in my life. You know what I'm saying? I've never seen someone do that play. And the amount of creativity you have to do to just do that on the fly in a play like that, you know, that was just his body in rhythm moving. And that's just like the type of shit, that's what stars do. You know what I mean? And so like that play was honestly it's hard to top a lot of Alpi's plays, but that one was particularly unique for me, and that's why I chose that one.
Insane body control, footwork, everything to be able to accomplish that play. No, I love that one. That's actually a fantastic pick. I'm going to go with very early this season, very early on. So I had to go way back deep for this one, but it was way back in November, the in-season tournament game against the Pelicans. Rockets wound up winning that game 104-101 thanks to a couple of late, insanely clutch threes from Fred VanVleet to come from behind and take a 1-point lead with just a little bit left in the game. But the play that I want to reference here from that game for Alperen Sengun, Rockets were down 5. It was 195. And this is a defensive sequence from Alperen Sengun. And this is what stands out, right? We talked about his defensive growth through a lot of this episode, but this was a thing that we hadn't, like, not to say that we hadn't seen this before from him, but just to see it when the stakes were this high and to see it really, for the first time this season was so impressive to me. He got a poke check on Larry Nance, right? As the Pelicans were trying to set up their play. Keep in mind, Rockets are down 5. Poke check on Larry Nance. He dives into the backcourt to try and recover the loose ball. Can't get to it. So Dyson Daniels picks it up, but he's like, three-quarter court at this point. Has to dribble it up. Passes the ball ahead to Zion. Sengun is hauling ass, right? He is hustling after diving on the floor for a loose ball. Gets back in the picture. And as Zion tries to flip the ball over to the weak side, Sengun is back in the picture quick enough to be able to get to tip the ball, create a deflection, and then the Rockets were able to come down on the other end. And Fred missed the transition 3, but then Rockets get the offensive rebound, and then he relocated to the corner. Dillon Brooks passes him the ball, bam, he drains the 3, takes the lead off of that 101-100. But that sequence from Alperen Sengun, right? The hustle, the dive, trying to and like one possession before that, he dove trying to steal the ball as well. He fouled, I think, Dyson Daniels when he did it on the possession before that. But just that was one of his best defensive games all season. But that effort, that intensity, that desire to impact the game on the defensive side of the ball, not just worrying about what he can do offensively, but trying to find a way to be a difference maker defensively in that game really stood out to me.
Yeah, no, effort plays, man. You know what I mean? To see that from your best player and a guy who's not supposed to play defense, that was an amazing play. And it directly led to a possession where the Rockets scored. That's how you play winning basketball. It's good to see Alpi succeed on something that, it could be considered a weakness for him. So that was a really good play.
All right, last one that we got here before we get to our season grade for Alperen Sengun. Give me your one number, Madison.
Ooh. I got one number, but it is a negative number. Okay.
Spoiler. Mine are negative too, so it's okay. Mine is negative, so
okay.
69. Hey, look, stats don't have to be good, so
right. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. We gotta switch it up. Keep y'all on y'all toes. 69%.
I already know which number it is.
Tell the people what number that is.
Madison and I,
Is it the same number?
Yeah, reminder, we never cross-check this stuff before we fire up the episode. We come into it with our own thoughts. It is Alperen Sengun's free throw percentage, because if you're going to be a star player and if you're going to get sent to the free throw line, if you're going to command double teams and get fouled, you cannot shoot 69% at the free throw line. There were a lot of times this season that Alpi left a lot of points hanging on the free throw line, unfortunately. And we know that he's a better shooter than that. Everything about his form, his mechanics look good. I wonder if part of it's mental, whatever, but that is an area that if you could just lock Alpi in the same gym as Jabari, 10,000 free throws for each of them this summer, because if you're going to be a tier 1 option, if you're going to be a number 1 guy, you got to be more consistent from the free throw line. That's an area where I can think of probably 3 or 4 different occasions. Hell, the Pelicans game that we were just talking about, Alpi hung a lot of free throws in that game, right? He had the and one where he ripped the ball out of Jordan Hawkins' hands and went up it wasn't an offensive board, but stole it, went back up, got fouled, went to the free throw line, had the chance to cut it to a 2-point game, missed the free throw, and then on the next possession down, he got fouled again, went to the free throw line, missed both of them in a game that the Rockets were down 2 possessions. So there were a lot of games like that this season. So I'm right there with you on the 69%. That is not a nice number for Alperen Sengun.
It is not. It actually is like a reduction from the past 2 seasons. It's a slight reduction. I think he was like at 70. Yeah. But it's
71 and a half last season.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just not what we want to see. And this is what we talk about when you have a young team and how you finish games. For a young team, learning how to finish games is about the little things. And the little things sometimes means free throw shooting. And you can't have your all-star and star players on the floor missing free throws, the guys that you depend on the most. And the Rockets lost a lot of games this year. Who knows? We would have been in the play-in this year had the Rockets shot a better free throw, just a respectable free throw percentage from a lot of our guys.
Jabari lost him 2 games by himself.
Right, by himself, right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, just imagine if you guys just all shot 80% from free throw. We might be in the play-in right now. And that is how small the margin is sometimes. So it's like getting good on the margins like that is really important. And Alpi, honestly, you're way too good of a shooter for you to be shooting 69% from the free throw line. And if you want to finish games with the ball in your hands, then you have to do that. That's just point blank.
Look, I love what Ben Sullivan has brought to this team as part of Ime Udoka's staff, but we should start a GoFundMe to go like poach Chip England from the OKC Thunder or something, because let's get the world-renowned shooting coach in Houston to not only help with the free throw shooting, but also the 3-point shooting. All right, Madison, that brings us to our final task here for the episode, our season grade for Alperen Sengun. I'll let you do the honors first. What would you give Alperen Sengun for this season?
I think I have to give Alperen Sengun A-. Okay. So I think I'm gonna give him an A- because honestly, I think Alperen Sengun answered some of the biggest questions we had about him this season. I think his path to superstardom is a lot more clear. I think he has a lot less question marks, but it is not. To me, I really want to give him like an 89, but I'm gonna just give him a round up for him, because I think in order to be an A+ or a high A, you would have actually had to make that leap into superstardom. But I do understand that's a lot to ask for a guy in his 3rd year, right? And so, but for him to show that he can anchor a top 10 defense and to also improve on his offensive game and honestly be arguably our best player this year on a team that went 500, I think that shows a whole lot about who Alpi is as a player and how bright his future is.
Yeah, no, dude. So look, he cemented himself as the Rockets' best player. He cemented himself as an all-star caliber talent. He proved that he could be a piece of a top 10 defense, or even for stretches of the season, right, a top 5 defense, as the big man, as the starting 5, playing 30 plus minutes a night. Grew in so many different facets of his game. Yes, we talked about the regression ever so slight in the free throw shooting. He did regress, unfortunately, as a 3-point shooter as well, shooting just under 30% from 3 this season, albeit on more volume this past year than he had in his first 2 years. But those are areas of growth that he has to get better, and we talked about that a lot in segment 2, just him getting better as a shooter. But yeah, I think I settle in that A- ranking as well, just because when you look at his entire body of work from this season, he is the one piece now of this Rockets core. And albeit, yeah, you had the insane stretch from Jalen Green, so now you're excited about pairing those two guys together and seeing what can Jalen and Sengun accomplish as a two-man game, as a duo from the start of the season, if they're both playing at that level, the level that Jalen was playing at in March and the level that Alpi was playing at all season long. That's incredibly tantalizing. It's exciting to think about as a Rockets fan, but I do think for everything that Sengun accomplished this year and for just how crazy high his ceiling still is, I don't think he's anywhere near his true ceiling. I fully believe that he's got, the ability to not improve his shooting and further unlock another layer and get to another tier offensively, which will, again, I think that's going to be the thing that carries him into that, all-star level to potentially superstar level talent. We know that he's got the talent to do it. We know that he's got the mental makeup and the desire to do it, the work ethic, all of that. So yeah, I'm going to give him an A- for this season, but we want to know what you guys would grade Alperen Sengun for his year 3 campaign. Let us know in the YouTube comments. How would you grade his overall season? What were your thoughts from this episode? What's the number one thing that Alpi has to work on this offseason? Let us know in the YouTube comments. Madison, you know the drill. Let everybody know where to track you down at.
Yeah, you can track me down on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Come talk Rockets basketball with me.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Drop your season grade for Alperen Sengun in the YouTube comments. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review helps us out tremendously. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.